Good evening. Welcome to our online version of the Steve's Christmas Party sponsored by the Conservation Society of San Antonio. My name is Patti Zaiontz and I am president of the Conservation Society. We are sad that we cannot have an in-person event this year, but everyone loves our party. Everyone loves to set the tone for the holidays by attending our event. So we thought we would share some of our very special food items that we serve at the party. Our party has always been patterned after what Mrs. Steves would have done when she lived in the home. Being German, she served a lot of German-style, wonderful pastries and items that she would have had during that time. So today I'm going to prepare for you Pfaffenbrodt, which is priest bread. Now the priest bread recipe that I have selected comes from the New Braunfels Museum Society cookbook for cookies, cookie cookbook. And it's got fabulous recipes in it from the German families that lived in New Braunfels, of which I have family members that were in New Braunfels, and that's how I acquired the cookbook. And I recall fondly eating many of those cookies over the holidays that were made with these recipes. So I hope you will enjoy. The Pfaffenbrodt is not a sweet cookie. It's more of a tea cake. And I'm sure that Mrs. Steves would have had a similar cookie at her afternoon teas and Christmas celebrations. So let's begin. You start with 4 egg yolks and 1 whole egg. You beat the egg yolks and whole egg until they're thoroughly combined and lemon colored. And then you add 1 cup and 1/4 cup granulated sugar. You beat the sugar and the eggs until they're well combined. And then you add the juice of 1 lemon. And today, I'm using the juice of a Ponderosa lemon out of the garden of one of our members, Margie Arnold. Thank you, Margie. You need to scrape your bowl so that you can get all the sugar off the sides. I'm going to use my beaters to scrape my spatula. Continue beating until it's thoroughly combined. Once the eggs, the sugar, and the lemon juice is combined, you add 2 cups of flour and 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Now I'll tell you, like every good recipe, you always try it first. The first time I tried it, the dough was rather sticky. So I've actually added an extra 1/2 cup of flour for a total of 2.5 cups of flour. So I'm using a hand mixer, and normally this recipe actually works better with a stand mixer like a KitchenAid because the hand mixer tends to bog down at the end. So you have to do your final mixing of this part of the recipe by hand. And I'm using a wooden paddle that belonged to my mother. Notice there's no butter or shortening in this recipe. And then the final ingredient is adding 2 cups of coarsely chopped pecans. So you gotta use your muscles to get those pecans incorporated into the dough. It definitely takes some work. So you are going to roll the dough out. It does not have to be refrigerated. And you can actually just press it. On a very well floured board, or I use my trusty Tupperware plastic mat that belonged to my mom. The rolling pin I'm using belonged to my grandmother. As you see, there's a rolling pin in front of me. And this is a rolling pin for making springerly, which is a German cookie. And it makes impressions on the top of the dough. Springerly is a rather complicated cookie recipe, which I intended to make. However, some of the ingredients are not readily available. But this is a delightful little pin, and it has images of a fish and a shell and a flower. And the Germans use this to decorate their cookies. Springerly presses also come as little individual presses that you can put on each little cookie. Mrs. Steve's, that was her pin. And you can buy Springerly pins off the internet these days. So you really want to roll your dough to about 1/4 of an inch thick. It's a very sturdy dough, so it's not the easiest dough in the world to roll. So it's kind of easy if you take your bench scraper and use that to lift your dough if you have one. If you don't, little plastic ones are readily available, but they're very good for picking up dough and things that you've chopped on your cutting board. Really takes this dough really gives you a workout. Now the recipe recommends that you cut your dough out in diamonds or shapes, but I brought cookie cutters today, and because the pecans are in there, you need to use a cookie cutter with a really sharp edge to cut through. You can get your dough fairly thin. And there might be voids in your dough, but that's okay. It's not the most gorgeous cookie, but it sure tastes good. So I'm going to start with a star cutter. I'll make a few stars. Press down really good. Just don't go through your plastic mat. And then we'll make a few bells. The majority of my cutters are from family, whether they came from my mom, either grandmother on either side. I like the cutters that have little knobs, like this heart-shaped cutter that came from my grandmother. Some of the dough's a little bit thick, but that's okay, they'll still bake up. I like to use parchment-lined cookie sheets. You can now buy parchment at H-E-B in the grocery store that are separate sheets. You can buy it by the roll, but H-E-B now carries the individual sheets for a half sheet pan, which is this size pan. We also have tree cutters and a sled. And we'll finish up with a little gingerbread man, even though this isn't gingerbread. Now you will have preheated your oven to 350. I like to keep an oven thermometer set in my oven shelf so that I know exactly what temperature my oven is baking, because oven temperatures do vary with if you don't have it calibrated regularly. So these will bake for 10 to 15 minutes depending on how thin you rolled them and in what shape. If you've cut them in diamond shapes, they'll probably take about 12 minutes if they are 1/4 of an inch thick. And if these are a little bit thicker, they're going to take a little bit more time. So we're going to pop them in the oven and let them bake for a few minutes. We'll be right back. So I already put a batch in the oven. So they're going to be a little bit different than the designs that you saw made with a cookie cutter. These designs were just cut into the dough. So it's a little bit more of a rugged looking cookie. So I'm going to push that up a little bit and then so they're very sturdy. You don't really need to, they won't break apart taking them off the sheet. They're more like a German tea cake. Biscuit, more like a biscuit, but they're quite delicious, and they have a little bit hint of lemon, and they keep for a long time in a cookie tin. And if you want them a little bit sweeter, you can use a sifter with a little bit of powdered sugar. Over the top to make a little bit of a sweeter cookie. So there you have it. Pfaffenbrodt, or bishop's bread. A delightful tea cake for all your Christmas gatherings. I think Mrs. Steves would be proud that we're making a traditional cookie that she likely served in her home. From the Conservation Society's house to your house, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays. We hope that you have a safe and wonderful holiday season, and that 2021 brings us a very robust and exciting year with lots of great things to come. So from our staff and myself, our board of directors, our executive committee, happy holidays. Thanks for tuning in.